Hey there, this is going to be a really important lesson because we're going to be looking at the single most important tag that connects all of the internet together. And this is going to be the anchor tag. Almost every web page will have some type of hyperlink within the page, connecting different pages as well as connecting content within the same page. So that's the element that we're going to be looking at, the tag that we're looking at in this lesson. But before we begin, we need to get some content into our HTML code. And this is where you can use lorem ipsum generators, lorem ipsum type content that looks like real content, but when you look at it, the words are not real words. They're just placeholder text. Look like they're Greek. And this is lorem ipsum text. So it's often used in order to generate dummy text and placeholder text. So I'm just over at a website called htmlstrip.com/lorem ipsum generator, and there's a number of these generators that are online. So I do need to add in some dummy text into the project. So I've gone over here, I've selected the number of paragraphs, headings, bold, links as well, and let's generate them. So it generated some random content, and then just down here below you can select that content already within HTML structure and take that content and paste it within your web page. And I'm just going to do a quick beautify of the content to clean it up and refresh the page. And now we have a page with a bunch of content, and it already created some hyperlinks. So let's take a closer look at these hyperlinks within our HTML code. So the hyperlinks are represented with an anchor tag. So that's just the A tag, and the core of the hyperlink is what's contained within the attribute part of the hyperlink. So first we link out to a website. You can also specify the behavior of when the link gets clicked, whether it's opening up within a blank page or whether it's opening up within the same page or the parent. So there's a number of options here for target. And then the content that is going to be seen as the hyperlink on the page itself. So in this case, we've got the ITA, Nemo, Beto, BTR gets closed off with the anchor tag. So closing that off. And that is what creates the hyperlink. So the structure, once again, and most important stuff is contained within the URL part of it. And then there's the text information for the hyperlink itself. So HTML links are what's known as hyperlinks. You can click on a link and it allows you to jump to another part of the document or another web page entirely. And by default, they're going to be underlined with the underscore, as well as they're going to be blue in color to make them stand out from the rest of the text. So let's create a hyperlink, and we'll just create one right at the top. So setting up our anchor tags and typical text within the hyperlink. So just saying click me. And when I refresh it, and we see we've got the text up here at the top. Notice that it's not underlined. And that's because there's no attributes yet within the anchor text. So within the hyperlink, it's not actually a link until we add in the attributes. So you can click it all you want, nothing is going to happen. And until you add in the attributes, this is just going to be a regular text that's going to be showing up in the page. We're linking to another web page that's a local web page. In order to create a hyperlink, we can link to the local path. And that's going to be a path within the same folder structure that the current file is within. And you can also see from where our web page is located on our computer that the local path and everything sitting within WebDev that's contained within that local index file. So we can navigate up and down from there. And the linked files, when they're relative, are relative to this position. So let's add in the location of where we're linking to. So the href is what defines the destination or the address. So let's specify the href attribute. And we've got a drop down because we are using brackets and it's giving us all of the local files that we can link to. So let's just select another file. We'll link to that. And it adds in the %20 instead of the space. So now this is going to turn into a link. It's going to be blue. And when I click it, it's going to take me to that other HTML page that I have within that same folder directory. This, and if I want it to open up to a new page, I can add in the attribute of target. Selecting blank will open it up in a brand new tab. By default, it's opening it up on itself. So when it's opening up on self, that's the default. So that was the default action where I clicked it and it stayed on the same tab. So this is thinking strategically when you are designing your website. You don't want traffic to be leaving your site, but if you are linking within your own site, then typically you're just linking within the self. So you can just use the default to link. So now when I click it, it opens up within a new tab in the browser, and I still can tab back to my original page. So there's two ways to provide paths to the files that we're looking for. So we can provide an absolute path, or we can provide a relative path. And the relative path is the one that is dependent on where the file is located, whereas the absolute path will always point to the same location. So when you're using an external website, then you're going to be using an absolute path, because this allows you to provide the link or the same location of that file, so it's independent of which file is accessing it. So now this is going to be the relative path, because we know where this file is located. But what happens if I take the same file, and if I do a save as, I create a new folder, and then I save this index file within the new folder. So now when I open this, it's located within style. So I open it into the browser, selecting open with, and I'm going to just open it within Chrome. I can open the file, and it still has the same link. It still looks the same, but if I click it, it's not going to find the file that I'm looking for, because this new file, which has the same source code, is no longer relative to this file because it's got a new location in the folder structure. So that's where we could use the absolute path. So if I wanted to link to a website like Google, I would use the absolute path. So HTTP:// and then the web address that I want to link to. And when you are linking out to another website, then typically we're using the blank target. And then within the link itself, now we've got a link to Google. So if I click the link to Google, it'll take me out to the website. And this path can actually be the same for the other file that we just cloned. And I'll just copy it in there, go out to the file and refresh it. Now when I click Google, it will still open up within Google because it does have that absolute path. There's also other uses for the anchor tag, and that's to link within the document itself. So if I go down to some of the content that I have down here, and if I add in an attribute of an ID, this is how we can identify this particular section of the content. And I'll just give it an ID of page 1. When you do give the attributes of ID, they do need to be unique, and they can be added into any element, but you shouldn't be adding in another ID of the same name. So when you are creating a next ID, then make sure that you're given a different name. You should only be creating one unique ID per web page. So if you want to link to that ID, and this is what's known as a bookmark, and we're not going to list target of blank because it is on the same page. So all we need to do in here is reference the ID name, and the path to that element with the ID is hashtag and then whatever the ID value was. So now let's refresh it and click bookmark, and notice that the scroll bar will scroll down to the part of the content where we did have the page 1 ID, and that indicates this content over here. I'll mark it so it does stand out and we can see it when we're scrolling. So once again, click bookmark, and it'll bring you down to the part of the page where the bookmark is present. If you've got the page opened up, and if you refresh and hit bookmark, it's not going to scroll anywhere because this is already showing the full page. So in order to get that scrolling effect, then that means that you need to have typically a lot of content. When you are using the bookmarks, it will move down to the part of the code where that content is present. So now it's up to you. Go ahead and create some hyperlinks. Create a web page with some hyperlinks to your favorite websites. And also try out adding in the ID attribute and setting up a few bookmarks. Make sure that you do have enough content on your page that it will scroll, or you could minimize the screen size like I have, and that will give you also the ability to click it and automatically see the page get scrolled to where that element with the ID is present. And once you've done that, you're going to be ready to move on to the next lesson. So go ahead and drop those anchors within your HTML code.